She doubted they would even try to understand what she was saying. Instead, she ignored the mud ball entirely and turned toward the carriage. "Things are getting ugly here," she said. Chapter 15 Violence. Maomao added more straw to the crackling fire in the oven. Animal dung might actually be easier. They were probably trying to be considerate by giving them straw and not dung to use for fuel, but the straw didn't clump together. This left it prone to drifting on the hot air. Charcoal and firewood were both expensive in the western capital and were rarely sold. Medicine boiled in the pot. She had to finish steeping it and then form it into pills, but she was so sleepy. "It's because I'm exhausted." She didn't think she'd done much aside from her usual work, but one could see where that would make her tired. When you were really exhausted, you didn't notice that you were. You went past the height of fatigue, and then the moment you got a chance to relax, your body simply collapsed. Not enough food, not enough medicine, not enough nutrition. There wasn't enough of anything. They tried to use other things when what they needed ran out, and when those substitutes were gone, they searched for something to replace even those. Lahan's brother had been joyful in the fields, but his joy turned to sorrow when the sweet potatoes were lost. They couldn't survive the night chill, so he declared they would plant regular potatoes instead. The sweet potato leaves had withered, but he said the stems could be eaten as vines. As for the wheat, it was growing as expected. Bean sprouts were being added to the food handouts little by little. Wheat bran was thought to be good for beriberi, so it was mixed into the bread. However, people didn't like the resulting loaves. The freak strategist would visit the annex from time to time. Maomao decided to at least nod hello to him. Chu's information said it would be dangerous for all of them if he decided to support Jiakuo. Upon investigation, they discovered that coal was being used in many places, even here in the western capital. It was immediately obvious, Maomao was told, because of the unique smell. It was used in ironworks and to fire the kilns used to make pottery, both locations associated with Jiakuan. There were too many things to think about. Her head was so full and she was so tired that she was slow to notice the spark. It drifted out and caught on the spare straw. "Is it just me, or is it a bit warm in here?" she thought. She only noticed when she looked over and saw the straw burning merrily. She put it out in a panic. It didn't get any worse than that, but the quack doctor was deeply concerned. Tianyu, who had shown up to get some medicine, had a great laugh at her expense. "I can't go on like this." She forced herself to focus. It was when one was least attentive that the worst fires started, and the fire in her stove wasn't the only thing burning at that moment. The incident occurred on the 75th day. Late that night, Maomao was awoken by shouting outside. She pulled on an overrobe and went to the window. She could see guards in the courtyard and an unsettling collection of glinting flames. Maomao opened her sleepy eyes and dressed quickly. At the bottom of the stairs she found Lihaku already awake and standing at the ready. The quack doctor was there clutching his pillow and still in his pajamas, evidence that Lihaku must have dragged him out of bed. "What's going on?" Maomao asked the soldier. "I don't know exactly, but I've got a few ideas." "Such as?" Efwi the quack wheezed sleepily, but Maomao pretended not to hear him. "A few days ago there was a messenger from an outpost to the west. There was an incursion by the barbarian tribes. They attacked the food stores in the area. A food storehouse, but that would mean even Maomao, oblivious to politics as she was, could see where this was going. Right, that storehouse contained the modest provisions the people there had been able to glean. If this outpost was to the west, that would put it close to the border with Sheo. The big shots have spent the last few days trying to decide what to do," said Lihaku. "That would explain why work has seemed so quiet recently. Jinchi hadn't even summoned Maomao for anything. So it had been the calm before the storm. Even if we wanted to help, our hands are full right now. Our good man Jinchi has been working his connections to get support from everywhere he can, but there's no point if it just gets stolen. The question is, what do we do about it? And the answers are getting ugly. Ugly. There's talk of starting a war. Yeah, it figures. It had been the way of humans, for that matter, of the whole animal kingdom from the oldest times. When you ran out of food to eat, you attacked someone else. But Master Jinchi doesn't support that, does he? No, he doesn't. And right now Maomao could hear voices from outside. She couldn't make out much, but she thought she heard someone cry, "Give us the royal brother." People are starting to push back against the timid, sheltered princeling. They'd known this could and probably would happen. Even Maomao had been aware. If anything, it had taken longer than they'd expected. The question is, what do we do about it? Then again, Maomao personally couldn't do much. She prepared a farm wagon and covered it with a cloth. Then she took the drowsy physician by the hand. "Oh, it is you, young lady," he said. "I just want to sleep a little longer." She guided the physician, still half in dreamland, onto the cart. It was fortunate that he was too sleepy to fully understand what was happening. If he had been more awake, he would have been frantic. "You can sleep, Master Physician," Maomao said. "Just do it here." The physician, his limbs sticking off the cart, went back to sleep. Lihaku looked at him, openly mystified. "It's so we can get away if we need to," Maomao explained. "If he had to run, I don't think the master physician could keep up with a foot-bound concubine from the rear palace." "Huh, fair enough. I could carry you under one arm and make tracks if I needed to, but I don't think I could do that for the old guy." "Good compromise. I can't believe they're turning on the royal family," Maomao said, packing a bag with bandages and wound care medicine. Even Lihaku made himself useful, carrying a bottle of oil. "Yeah, if this happened in the capital, the ringleaders would be executed and everyone who joined them would be beaten," he said. "I guess it just shows how high emotions are running. The people had their collective hackles up." "It's a tough spot," Lihaku said. "If it came down to kill or be killed, I have to admit I'd start killing." He had an unhappy smile on his face as he tore a piece of cloth and wrapped it around the end of a stick. They didn't have any firewood to serve as torches, so he'd broken the leg off a chair. He was a soldier, trained in the ways of battle. He didn't want to fight, but if he had to, he could. Then he said, "With an outbreak of open violence like this, it's the local rulers who are really going to be in trouble." "Yeah," Maomao said. Again, Maomao didn't know much about politics. She could tell this was serious trouble. Her heart was pounding in her ears, but having Lihaku there gave her reassurance. She also had the responsibility of looking after the quack doctor. Master Jyaku-O could say the people rose up on their own, but he let things fester long enough for that to happen. A few commoners' heads would not be enough to pay for this affront to the royal family's dignity. Maomao understood that. The lives of the imperial family simply weighed heavier than those of the common people. Master Jyaku-O was clearly cultivating his own popularity. She knew their man Jinchi was a good guy, but she could not believe he put up with it. Even if he was willing to let it go, the people around him would not be. Word must have reached the central region by now. If even the ordinarily relaxed Lihaku felt that way, the anger of those in the royal capital must be immense indeed. That was a good point. I wonder how Empress Jayukai and Master Jayukyun feel about this. Normally you would expect them to have something to say about it. Yes, you would. Considering their positions, neither of them could simply drop everything and come to the western capital. But might they send a letter or a messenger? At the same time, there was another important figure here in addition to Jinchi and the freak strategist. Someone who would certainly not neglect communications with the capital. What was his name again? "The other important guy who is here?" Maomao asked. She had heard it several times now, but as usual she had forgotten it. "You aren't much for remembering people's names or faces, are you, miss?" It was a "let's see, I don't remember. I remember he wasn't, you know, a towering presence." "Sounds like you're not much better than me, Master Lihaku." "Hold on. This guy was supposed to be in charge of rituals or something, right? Rituals, so that would make him part of the Board of Rites." "Oh, Lu, Vice Minister Lu, that was his name," Maomao said, finally remembering. Right, Vice Minister Lu. Let's just have faith that he is doing something, probably. We can have all the faith we want. The trouble is happening now." Point taken. They both sighed and then there was a loud noise. Were the commoners trying to force their way into the annex? "What just happened?" Maomao asked. If anyone had been hurt, she wanted to help them, but first she had to see to her own safety. Which, given her limited options, mostly meant lighting the torch and throwing it if anything happened. I'm not eager to do that. But if it's the only way to keep myself safe, I will. They heard footsteps shuffling closer. Maomao and Lihaku both got ready to fight. "Miss Maomao, are you there?" It was Chu. "Do you need me to explain what's going on?" "Yes, please." Chu was holding a flag and sounded about as anxious as she usually did. "There's a mob of commoners outside." Their anger finally exploded, just as we predicted. They are shouting for the Moon Prince to come out to them or to be sent out to them. It is that sort of thing, you know. Yes, I can imagine and I can hear them too. But you are thinking, wasn't there a big bang just now? Yes, I am. That was Master Jyaku-O's arrival. Maomao grabbed her bag of medical equipment. "Please do not worry. Even Master Jyaku-O wouldn't lay a hand on a member of the imperial family." But I do think this is getting very interesting. Somehow the things you think are interesting always just seem bad to me. Well, anyway, come and have a look. At Chu's urging, Maomao started outside. Lihaku followed them. "What about the master physician?" Maomao asked. Good question, I guess we should bring him, Chu said and started pushing the cart, although she didn't look very happy about it. She kept shooting pointed glances at Lihaku until he took over for her. Once they were outside, Maomao could hear a resounding man's voice. Do you all understand? He was saying. Do you know how much the Moon Prince, who honorably resides in this household, has done for the people of the Western capital? She heard the people murmuring. The grains in your food distributions were brought from afar by the Moon Prince. We are not now starving because of his generosity. The free clinic was also his doing. Those who have been there know all about it. What is going on here? If the voice had belonged to someone from Jinchi's inner circle, the words would have made sense. But as far as Maomao could surmise, that was Jyaku-o speaking. She picked up her pace. She would have to be closer if she wanted to see anything. Getting too close would be dangerous, though. She looked around for somewhere that might serve as a good vantage point. Miss Maomao, Chu said, beckoning to her. She was already halfway up a nearby tree. Maomao climbed up after her. Please try not to fall, Lihaku said. He was still pushing the quack doctor in his cart. Up in the branches, Maomao and Chu had an excellent view of what was going on. They could see Jinchi with Basin standing behind him. Jyaku-o was in front of Jinchi, interposing himself between Jinchi and the masses. The people were keeping a respectful distance, almost like spectators at a play. The Moon Prince responded with alacrity to the insect swarm. Much as I tried to provide for you as best I could, it is unquestionably thanks to him that you have suffered as little as you have. The immediate support from the central region is thanks to the Moon Prince's presence here. Do you mean to tell me you cannot understand that? Maomao was thoroughly flummoxed. Jyaku-o appeared to be completely reversing himself. He had been more than happy to take credit for Jinchi's work up to this point. Now he was praising Jinchi's efforts and loudly informing the populace about them. What was more, Jinchi was showing his face before the people of the Western capital for the first time. Yes, he had met with a handful of VIPs now and then, but a crowd of commoners was new. His courtly bearing and almost celestial beauty were not lost on the people. Maomao spotted several women who were clearly love-struck. Normally, he would probably try to be modest about all this, Maomao thought, but it was true that Jinchi had done all those things. There was no point denying it. The only person who might have a real cause to complain about Jinchi was the one who had been sent on a grueling grasshopper-slaying quest, Lahan's brother. Speaking of whom, Lahan's brother was one of those watching things develop from inside the annex. He was so ordinary that Maomao would never have noticed him if it hadn't been for the hoe he was carrying. He seemed to have it just in case he needed to defend himself against any outbreaks of violence. But had there really been no better weapons he could have grabbed, the hoe would make him look more like one of the marauding peasants. Jyaku-o's voice carried clearly. It was less like he was lecturing and more like he was declaiming, delivering a speech in a play. The people were captivated by it. One of the commoners raised a hand. How is it the royal younger brother knew this swarm was coming? How could he know if he didn't bring it himself? A few shouts of agreement came from the crowd. That is a difficult question. If Lahan had been here, he could have broken down the statistics from the last several years. He could have explained how the climate and the smaller local swarms pointed toward this larger one. But even if it was all written down, many people here don't know their numbers. They wouldn't know what the numbers mean and they wouldn't be convinced by them. Jinchi took a step forward. Allow me to explain that. When we performed our divination rituals in the capital, it produced a sign of grave misfortune in the west. Considering how greatly this city has flourished under the Jyaku clan in recent years, what manner of disaster could harm it? A swarm of insects seemed the only likely prospect. A murmur ran through the crowd at the simple fact that the imperial younger brother would directly address a commoner. His voice was lovely and bracing, but it didn't carry as well as Jyaku-o's. Divination, huh? Was it possible that was why Jinchi had brought Vice Minister Lu with him? He must have realized that talk about agricultural products and statistics on recent swarms would go over the heads of many of the commoners. Divination would be a much more intuitive explanation for them. If you know the people are superstitious, comfort them with superstition. It wasn't a bad plan, Maomao thought, but almost immediately she discovered that it was a mistake. Jyaku-o looked like he had been waiting for Jinchi to say something like this. Precisely. At this moment, we need the Moon Prince's power more than anyone else. He thrust his hands into the air as if calling the commoners to witness for him. If the oracles of those who live above the clouds are for us, what can stop the Western capital indeed, I say province itself from thriving ever more mightily? The people began to thrum with Gyukuo's words. Those who had looked on Jinchi with hostility mere moments ago now turned to the emperor's younger brother with eyes of hope. Many still looked displeased, but they no longer shouted and jeered. "What say you? Shall we ask the Moon Prince to perform a ritual on our behalf?" Gyukuo certainly knew how to work the crowd. The commoners raised their hands in approbation. "Oof, so it's come to that," said Chu, not looking very happy. He did bring Vice Minister Lu in order to perform a ritual. The answer would have to be before Chu could say what the answer would be. Jinchi acted. "Understood," he said. His answer was affirmative. He had no other choice, and anyway the performance of a ritual had always been part of the plan during his visit here. It had simply been postponed by the swarm. Gyukuo smiled a brilliant smile, but one that also spoke of triumph assured, and more than a little pride. "Then ask for, I say, province's further growth. Ask that the disaster from the west be itself brought low." Jinchi's expression never changed, but those closest to him knew. They could see a subtle shift in his face that indicated dismay. He had done something wrong now. Maomao could not see Jinchi's exact expression because of the distance and the dark, but she knew how it must look. "He is right," shouted one of the commoners. "What good does it do us to blame the insects on the Moon Prince? Why would he bring such calamity upon us? Where did those bugs come from?" "They came from the west, far to the west of us." "Yes, that is right," agreed someone else. Apparently this was the part where they were supposed to laugh. Several of the commoners chuckled, although Maomao did not know why. "Exactly," Gyukuo said. "If there is fault to be found, it lies not with the Moon Prince, but with the one who was entrusted with the care of the western capital, myself. I can only beg forgiveness. If the slightest offense has been given to you, our august visitor, please hold me responsible." He turned to Jinchi and bowed dramatically. "Goodness gracious," Chu said, looking like she wasn't sure what to make of this. "What is more, if there was a failure to protect this city from the grasshoppers, that too is my responsibility. I have been entrusted with leading this place on behalf of my father, Gyukuan. The people have starved and I take the blame. To all of you I can say only I'm sorry." He bowed toward the commoners. "Master Gyukuo, don't bow to us, that's right, we did this to ourselves, you've done nothing wrong." The people were eager for Gyukuo to raise his head. Maomao realized the scene had changed. Jinchi, who had been the star until a moment ago, had been overshadowed by Gyukuo. "He's right. The honored imperial younger brother isn't at fault here," someone said. "It's those troublemakers from the west who brought the bugs. Yeah, and now they're trying to steal our food too." There were more shouts of agreement from the crowd. Gyukuo had spoken of the disaster that came from the west. Maomao had assumed he meant the grasshoppers. But then wait, what just happened? He'd shifted the focus of the anger from the insects to the western lands themselves. Immediately to the west of Isei province was Sheo. "Looks like a new fire is starting," Chu said, her eyes cold. "A new fire? I'm almost impressed. I wondered what was going on, but it turns out all the play acting has been leading up to this moment." "Play acting? What are you talking about?" Chu twirled her finger and a pigeon appeared in her hand. "All of it. Calling the Moon Prince here and the master strategist, deliberately affecting a bad attitude toward the Moon Prince, deliberately giving the common people a bad impression of him. All of it was calculated for this purpose. That might even include sending his adopted daughter to the rear palace. Now that would be something." The pigeon went fluttering out of Chu's hand. "The West has to pay. Let's get our food back. Crush the barbarian tribes." The people started thrusting their fists in the air. The murderous energy that had been directed toward the imperial family just moments before had taken on a new focus. Master Lacan said this guy was looking to be a hero, but it looks to me like he's just as good at playing supporting roles. Perhaps even better, actually. Don't you think so? Maomao asked what he meant. "Well, you see, this is a stage put here by Master Gyukuo. He caused the Moon Prince to mount the stage without ever intending to. In fact, he even set him up in the lead role. He apologized exquisitely for the rudeness to the imperial family and cleared up the people's misunderstanding all at once. And now the Moon Prince is standing there looking like a gorgeous actor. Though I suppose you could say that at the moment, he and Master Gyukuo are sharing the spotlight." Maomao understood what Chu was saying. Gyukuo had set up the imperial younger brother and himself, the acting governor of the western capital, as the stars. He cast a foreign people in the role of the enemy. He had said nothing definitive himself, only guided the people to the conclusions he wanted them to reach. What if Master Jinchi just stole it back? Do you think he could? This crowd was a powder keg with his name on it just a minute ago. The people we are dealing with are easily swayed. The Moon Prince has not said anything untrue, but neither has Master Gyukuo. It is simply that the people's attention has been swapped from the locusts to the foreign people who took their food. Maomao followed her point. He does not get his hands dirty. He does not kidnap anyone, but he has effectively taken a hostage. It is clever. Chu nodded in agreement. Jinshi began to speak, but he could not offer a direct rebuttal. He only said that he would perform a ritual to expunge the destruction. It was unobjectionable, as Jinshi often is, but it was not enough to completely dispel the people's misgivings. Maomao swallowed hard and looked at Chu. She asked, dropping any term of respect for the acting governor, "So what is Gyukuo after? Every hero needs a stage. But maybe the western capital is not the stage he wants." Chu peered off to the west. There must be some reason he is so eager to start a fight with Sheo.